Studying Stoicism at home can be very rewarding, but we're missing something when we isolate ourselves and dig into our books and our notebooks without any input from others. Luckily, there are options available to us. Donald Robertson, the author of Stoicism and the Art of Happiness, offers online courses involving various aspects of Stoicism. Donald was kind enough to record a segment where he discusses some of the aspects of Stoicism that we may all find useful, as well as his upcoming course on how to think like a Roman emperor. I've taken a few of his online courses and I found them very helpful. Not only is it structured very well, you also have a community of individuals to talk to and get feedback from, which really enhances the experience quite a bit. So I highly recommend you check out any of the courses that Donald has to offer.
Hello, this is Donald Robertson, author of Stoicism and the Art of Happiness and other fine books. I wanted to do a quick audio recording to plug my forthcoming course and also to talk about some ways Stoicism helped me in my own life. First, let's get the plug out of the way. I run an online course called How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, which is about Marcus Aurelius and how his life and character can help us to understand Stoic philosophy more deeply, more richly, and particularly how to apply it to problems of everyday living like anger, fear, sadness, pain, and illness, and so on. It only runs once or twice a year, and it's starting soon on Sunday the 18th of February, so enrolment has already opened just recently, and if you go to my Stoicism e-learning site, learn.donaldrobertson.name, you can find out all about it there. Okay, so let's talk about some of those practical applications. Let's get into the details. How we can actually use Stoicism in our daily lives. I was a cognitive therapist for many years, and I worked with lots of different types of clients in different contexts, and I ran a training school for therapists in the UK. And right now my work is all writing and running online courses about therapy and personal development. So psychological techniques are my special area of interest. And there are many of them to be found in Stoicism. We can carve out a list in different ways, but usually when I do it, there's maybe roughly a dozen or so distinct psychological techniques that I can identify in the Stoic literature, and that's a lot. My first book in Stoicism, which was called The Philosophy of CBT, was basically entirely dedicated to this subject. It provided an overview of the relationship between Stoicism and modern psychotherapy, and particularly listed all the techniques I could find and compared them to ones that I found in modern psychotherapy. So if you're interested in Stoicism, you probably know some of these techniques quite well already, like the premeditation of adversity, the contemplation of death, the contemplation of the sage, the view from above, and so on. If you're new to Stoicism and you want a quick guide to some of those techniques, I created a 5-page PDF that you can download from my e-learning site for free, and my graphic designer, Rocio de Torres, did a beautiful job of making it look really nice, so people really like to have that as a reminder of what they might do as a Stoic daily routine. Practical routine, and it's partly based on the exercises and daily routine that I've been using for many years now. So I'm going to pick another technique today, one that I found useful myself. I'm going to say a little bit more about that. As is often the case, the Stoics didn't give it a name, but I like to call it depreciation by analysis. That's the name used by an early 20th century psychotherapist called Charles Bauduin, who is a big fan of Stoicism and wrote a little self-help book about it. He describes this Stoic technique as a pitiless analysis of external objects or events, through which we come to see them as trivial, and we learn indifference toward indifferent things. Apatheia, the Stoics call it. It's clearly related to the Stoic method known as phantasia catalepticae, which translators call physical definition or objective representation. It's a tricky word to translate, but you get the idea. It requires suspending all value judgments and emotive rhetoric and just sticking to the facts. And it's quite foundational to Stoic practice. Describing things in very plain and honest and objective language. That's what Stoics and their use of language are all about. Then we analyse things in various ways, with something like what we call today scientific detachment. So Baudouin wrote, "The principle that underlies the Stoic method may be described as depreciation by analysis. When we decompose into its constituent parts the object which has been of so much concern to us, we shall realise that it is a matter of no moment, much as a child which has pulled a toy to pieces is disillusioned and says, 'Is that all that it is?'" Now, this is a technique that may be quite familiar from the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. When something evokes strong feelings, either desires or emotions that trouble us in some way, the Stoics advise us to pause and mentally dissect the thing before us. That's also like the attitude of an ancient natural philosopher describing some phenomenon he's observing, like the movements of the stars in the heavens, for example, or how earthquakes function, for instance. Or it's like a physician listing the symptoms of a patient very dispassionately in a matter-of-fact way. Marcus even compares it to an artist describing something terrifying, like the jaws of a ferocious lion or the foam dripping from the mouth of a wild boar. Describing it from a different perspective, though, so that it doesn't seem frightening any longer, but perhaps even something beautiful to see. Sometimes this very much resembles the pulling apart of the toy metaphor, though. Marcus, for example, famously tells himself that his imperial purple cloak is just sheep's wool dyed in fermented shellfish mucus. A pitiless analysis, describing things in very objective terms, pulling them apart into their constituents. Marcus tells us to ask of each distinct part in isolation, is this unbearable? If it's something feared, or if it's something we desire, he might ask, would it be unbearable to lose this? Each part in isolation seems easier to overcome or to let go of. Marcus compares this to listening to a piece of music and thinking of each note independently in isolation in such a way that we spoil the effect of the melody upon us. But for Stoics, we need only apply this method to things that cause unhealthy desires or upsetting emotions. You could call this a divide and conquer strategy, and it's actually very similar to a technique used in modern acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, which is a modern evidence-based form of behaviour therapy. So we have some indirect justification for believing that this Stoic technique works. When it's a person who upsets us, as it usually is in life, Marcus imagines what they said or did as just one small part of their whole personality or their whole life. He sees them from a more rounded and complete perspective. He asks himself what sort of person they are overall in life, how they spend their time, what their values and goals are. He tries to really enter into their mind, as he puts it, or step into their shoes and deepen his empathic understanding, in such a way that the thing they said or did seems to be cast in a very different light. Our anger or resentment toward them becomes kind of diluted because we think of what they did as just one ingredient in their whole personality, instead of narrowly focusing on it and magnifying its importance. We view it in context as part of a bigger picture in relation to the whole person, insofar as we can. And Marcus thinks that when we do this, we'll grasp things more objectively and more rationally, and our feelings will be moderated. Therapists, as it happens, have to empathically understand their clients. It's a big part of the job with every client, basically. And they usually find that means they become less upset by things that clients do or say as a result. So I'd say from my own experience that what Marcus is talking about works pretty well. This depreciation by analysis, or in the case of people, you could call it depreciation by empathy. So I hope those few words help some of you a little bit along your path of learning Stoicism as a practice. And like I said, if you want to learn more, you can find a load of free downloads and mini courses on my e-learning site, or you can enroll in my main course if you're quick, How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, and the website is learn.stoic.com. stoic.donaldrobertson.name. So I look forward to maybe hearing from some of you in the future about your own experiences with Stoicism. I hope you found that information about applying Stoicism useful. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.